water. Just to see where this is in the biological molecules topic, we are on 3.1.7, water. And looking at the specification reference from AQA, water is a major component of cells. It has several properties that are important in biology. In particular, water is a metabolite in many metabolic reactions, including condensation and hydrolysis reactions. It is an important solvent in which metabolic reactions occur. It has a relatively high heat capacity, buffering changes in temperature. It has a relatively large latent heat of vaporization, providing a cooling effect with little loss of water through evaporation. It has strong cohesion between water molecules. This supports columns of water in the tube-like transport cells of plants and produces surface tension where water meets air. So, water is vital to living organisms and it makes up 80% of a cell's contents and has lots of important functions inside and outside of cells. So it is a metabolite in metabolic reactions including condensation and hydrolysis. So remember, condensation is where water is taken from the molecules and released as a product. Hydrolysis is where you add water to the molecule to split it up. It is an important solvent, meaning some substances dissolve in it. Most metabolic reactions take place in solution. It's important for temperature control as it has a high latent heat of vaporization and a high specific heat capacity. The molecules are very cohesive. They stick together, which helps water transport in plants and transport in other organisms. So now we'll look a bit more at the structure of water. So the polarity of water. A molecule of water, or H2O, is one oxygen joined to two hydrogens. Because they are shared, the negative hydrogen electrons are pulled towards the oxygen atom. So the other side of each hydrogen atom is left with a slight positive charge. The unshared negative electrons on the oxygen give a slightly negative charge. This makes water a polar molecule. It has a slight partial negative charge on one side and a slight partial positive side on the other. So the hydrogens are slightly positive, the oxygen is slightly negative. Hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonds are weak bonds between a slightly positive charged hydrogen in one molecule and a slightly negative charged atom in another molecule. Hydrogen bonds form between water molecules because the slightly negatively charged oxygen atoms of water attract the slightly positively charged hydrogen atoms of other water molecules. This hydrogen bonding gives water some of its useful properties. So it's an important metabolite. Many metabolic reactions involve condensation or hydrolysis. Hydrolysis requires a molecule of water to break a bond. Condensation reaction releases a molecule of water and a new bond is formed. As an example, amino acids are joined to make a polypeptide by condensation reaction, and the energy from ATP is released through hydrolysis. It's a good solvent. A lot of important substances in reactions are ionic. This means they are made from a positively charged atom and a negatively charged atom. Salt includes positive sodium ion and a negative chloride ion. As water is polar, the slightly positive end is attracted to the negative ion, and the negative end of the water is attracted to the positive ion. This means that the ions will get surrounded by water molecules. In other words, they'll dissolve. Water's polarity makes it useful as a solvent. This means living organisms can take up useful substances dissolved in water and transport them around the organism's body. Has a high latent heat of vaporization. Water evaporates or vaporizes when the hydrogen bonds holding the molecules together break. This allows the water molecules on the surface to escape as water vapor. It takes a lot of energy or heat to break hydrogen bonds, so a lot of energy is used when water is evaporated. This means water has a high latent heat of vaporization. Lots of heat is used to change it from a liquid to a gas. This is useful for living organisms because it means they can use evaporation to cool down without losing too much water. When water evaporates, it carries away heat energy from a surface, which cools the surface and helps to lower the temperature. For example, when humans sweat to cool down. They can buffer or resist changes in temperature. Hydrogen bonds give water a high specific heat capacity. The energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of a substance by 1 degree C. When water is heated, much heat energy is used to break the hydrogen bonds between the water molecule. This means there's less heat energy available to actually increase the temperature of the water. So water has a high specific heat capacity. It takes a lot of energy to heat it up. This is useful because it means that water doesn't experience rapid temperature changes. This makes water a good habitat because the temperature underwater is more stable than on land. The water inside organisms also remains a stable temperature, helping maintain a constant internal body temperature. Water is very cohesive. Cohesion is the attraction between molecules of the same type. Water molecules are very cohesive. They tend to stick together because they are polar. Strong cohesion helps water to flow, making it great for transporting substances. For example, it's how water travels in columns up the xylem in plants. Strong cohesion also means water has a high surface tension when it comes into contact with air. This is the reason why sweat forms droplets, which evaporate from the skin. It's also the reason that pond skaters, for example, can walk on the surface of a pond. Okay, let's look at an exam question now from AQA. So state and explain the property of water that can help to buffer changes in temperature. So water has a relatively high specific heat capacity, so it can gain or lose a lot of heat energy without changing temperature. Or it takes a lot of heat energy to change the temperature. So in summary, water is a major component of cells. It has several properties that are important in biology. It's a metabolite in metabolic reactions, including condensation and hydrolysis reactions. It's a solvent in which metabolic reactions occur. It has a relatively high heat capacity, buffering changes in temperature. Has a relatively large latent heat of vaporization, providing a cooling effect with little loss of water through evaporation. Has strong cohesion between water molecules. This supports columns of water in the tube-like transport cells of plants and produces surface tension when water meets air.